In 2005, single father Richard Hale mysteriously abandoned his 6-year-old son Daniel at a hospital, leaving the boy to grow up in foster care with only questions and anger. 20 years later, Richard returned, frail and remorseful, revealing he had left to protect Daniel from risky experimental treatments doctors had pushed for. Through a worn journal filled with memories and regrets, Daniel finally learned that his father's disappearance was not abandonment, but a painful act of sacrifice and love. A father walked into a hospital holding his little boy's hand. Hours later, he walked out alone and vanished for 20 years. When he finally returned, the truth he carried shattered everything the son thought he knew. Tonight, we'll uncover the heartbreaking story of Daniel Hale, a boy abandoned at a hospital, who grew up never knowing why his father left. 2 decades later, their shocking reunion revealed a secret of sacrifice, love and a truth that had been buried for years. The year was 2005. Richard Hale, a quiet, hard-working single father, took his 6-year-old son Daniel to St. Mary's Hospital in Indiana. Daniel had been sick for weeks, and doctors recommended more tests. Neighbors knew Richard as a devoted father, the kind of man who showed up at every school event and never let his boy out of his sight. So when he suddenly walked out of that hospital and never came back, it stunned everyone. Police searched. His apartment was empty. His car was abandoned at a bus station. He was gone without a trace. And Daniel, he was left behind, clutching his toy car, waiting for a father who would never return. Placed into foster care, Daniel grew up with one unanswered question: why did my dad leave me? Life in foster care was harsh. Some families treated him kindly, others didn't care at all. Each time he packed his small bag to move again, the same wound followed him, the feeling of being unwanted. By his teenage years, anger replaced hope. He stopped asking about his father. By adulthood, he had built a quiet life as a mechanic, keeping his past buried. But the wound never healed. Then, in 2025, the phone rang. The hospital that had once been the last place he saw his father was calling again. The receptionist's words made him freeze. "There's someone here asking for you. He says his name is Richard Hale. He says he's your father." Daniel didn't believe it until he walked into the lobby. And there, older, thinner, grey-haired but unmistakably the same man, stood Richard Hale. Before Daniel could unleash years of anger, Richard spoke first. His voice was weak but urgent. "I never left you because I wanted to. I left you because I had to. And now, you deserve to know the truth." They met later that night, away from the hospital. Richard explained what had really happened. Back in 2005, doctors had warned that Daniel's condition might require experimental treatments. They promised they could help, but the procedures were risky and untested. Richard became terrified. He didn't trust them. He believed if he stayed, his son would be subjected to something that could harm him, or worse. So he made the hardest decision of his life. He disappeared, believing that if he left, Daniel would be safe from being pushed into dangerous treatments. Richard reached into his bag and handed Daniel a worn leather journal. Inside were 20 years of entries. Every page was filled with memories, fears, and longing. "I thought of you every single day," the final entry read. "I never abandoned you. I sacrificed everything to keep you alive. And even though I wasn't there, you were always my son." Tears filled Daniel's eyes as he realized the truth. The man he had hated for so long hadn't been a coward. He had been a protector. The years of silence, the pain of growing up alone had all been the cost of his father's desperate attempt to save him. For the first time in 20 years, Daniel understood. His father had not failed him. He had loved him enough to lose him. The reunion didn't erase the pain of the lost years, but it gave Daniel what he had wanted since he was 6 years old: an answer. Sometimes love doesn't look like holding on. Sometimes it looks like letting go so the person you love has a chance to survive. And as Daniel closed the journal, he finally felt peace. His father had walked out of the hospital 20 years ago, not to abandon him, but to save him.